Welcome to the Big Meat Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. And I am back from the Southern Swing and have taken a couple of days off. I don't know if I'll necessarily really say that is truthfully what it was. I come back on a Friday night and take the weekend off as I would like to on a lot of weeks. That's not always allowed based on the schedule. Take Monday off, spend the last 2 days mowing the damn lawn. And let me tell you, I would rather work than mow the lawn. Just imagine how much the lawn grows in 3 weeks. And it seriously looked like a wheat field out there. I had another thing I was going to say about it, but it was Andor related, and I don't know if anybody has not gotten around to getting caught up on season 2 on Andor, so I didn't want to spoil anything. So, I'll just say it was like a wheat field out there. So I think over the course of the last couple of days, I've spent 10 hours out there mowing, and I don't necessarily live on a huge plot of land. It's not, and the cat is bitching. I'm gonna punch her in the face. I'm in a salty ass mood today, so let me just get this out of the way right now. Probably not the show to watch with your kids because I'm in a foul mood.
Warning, the following show features stunts performed either by professionals or under the supervision of professionals. Accordingly, MTV and the producers must insist that no one attempt to recreate or reenact any stunt or activity performed on this show.
All right, well, there you go with that. Thank you for joining me here on the show today. A lot to talk about Southern Swing. We've got some stuff with Notre Dame, and they getting ready to see their series with USC disappear. Washington fans popping off, acting like they invented football and that they're the only ones with a loud stadium. Get the fuck out of here is what I say to that. It's just, hold on a second. I'm not going to sit here and listen to a cat complain throughout the entire show. So here we go. All of that and your questions. So, first of all, you can be sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, subscribe to BuckeyeHuddle.com. We got so much going on there right now. The addition of Jeremy Birmingham and Andrew Ellis, huge gets for us. It's it's such a great time to get in. We're 2 weeks away from the start of camps. So much recruiting coverage is going to be coming up there. You don't want to miss out. On top of everything that we had on Southern Swing, 5,300 miles, no big deal. I think we talked to kids in 7 states, drove through 6 or 7 more. It's a lot. It's a lot. I think with each passing year, it gets to be more and more of a pain in terms of how difficult the travel is. I think what really makes up for it, though, is the fact that we talk to so many great kids. And that's what really makes the difference for everything is just, we're here to tell stories. We're not out to represent Ohio State. We're not out to do anything like that. We're storytellers, and that's all we do. So being able to be out there and to talk to these kids and tell their stories really is a highlight of the whole process. So, I did a show with Tom Orr on Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, also something that you can see here on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And we talked about a few things from Southern Swing. I know not everybody watches every show you should. I can't say that I managed to get around to watching every show other than the shows I'm in. But, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much, but, just a lot of great players along the way. We did talk to a couple of commitments with Simeon Caldwell, with Corbin Fordham. That was great. We really tried to get in to see Brock Boyd in South Lake, Texas. we got to the end of the road into Texas, and we had 2 days to do the entire state of Texas. So we made the difficult decision not to do Houston this trip. It's the first time in a long time that we've not gone out and gotten any players in Houston. So we went right to Dallas. And we had to prioritize schools that we were hearing back from. We could not run the risk of just showing up to a school when the practice was and hoping to be let in. Because I don't know if everybody has been to Dallas. I lived in Dallas for 5 years, so I knew Dallas well. I don't know if I know Dallas well now. Everything's constantly in a state of changing. But I lived out there for 5 years, so if you don't know Dallas, to get from Dallas to Fort Worth, and I'm not even talking like a far east Dallas suburb to a far west Fort Worth suburb. I mean, it could take you a couple of hours. I mean, that's with factoring in traffic and some of the other things that are on the table. Those are things that you have to factor in. So we did a situation of where we hit south. We tried to get a player in Waxahachie. That one didn't necessarily work out. You're going to have that at some points, but we got players that were, south of Mesquite, south of DeSoto. And then on the second day, we went and hit North Dallas, Fort Worth. And that's where you're getting up into Frisco, Plano, that type of area. So I guess if I had a way to, if we had unlimited money and we could jet around and we were not stuck with a 7-hour drive one day to get into position and a 9-hour drive another day to get into position, I would have liked to have had 2 more days in Texas. But it's something has got to give. And really what it comes down to is the front end of the trip is what cost us on the back end of the trip. Normally, we don't hit the state of Virginia. Normally, we don't do 2 days in North Carolina. And being 4 days into the trip and not even being into Georgia yet is what really cost us on the back end of the trip. Now, you go where the talent is. You don't just sit there and look at the state that the kid's in and say, well, this is the legitimacy of why you go and you get this kid. That's not how it works. If there are 9 kids in Virginia, you're going to have to go to Virginia, plain and simple. I mean, it just is what it is. But this trip was 19 days. I think it was 19 days all said and done. I mean, there was a baked-in day that nobody really was aware of. We left on a Sunday to get to Charlottesville. There weren't any kids in Charlottesville, but that's as far as we could make it before I fell asleep behind the wheel to get into position for Richmond. So I think it was 19 days all total. As I said, 5,300 miles plus. It was more than 53. I think when I got out of the car at my place, it was like 53:15. I didn't start the timer. I didn't start the mileage, the trip odometer, until 20 miles out of my place. And Mark had to get the rental car. So there probably was 50 miles baked into the front and probably another 40 miles baked into the back of the trip. So yeah, I could get away with saying 5,400, and then if we're just rounding, it's just a rounding error to get to 5,500. But I posted a picture of 5,300. That's ultimately what we went with in terms of talking about the distance. And we're pretty caught up on most of the footage that we are going to post. Outside of, I do have another Buc-ee's video coming. We did a Buc-ee's video last year, maybe the year before. I don't even remember. And it was fine. It was okay. There was no planning into it on my part. Shame on me. This one was a little more planned, but it also was shot like the last day of the trip. We stopped at one other Buc-ee's along the way in Warner Robins, Georgia, if I remember right. it Warner Robins? I think it was Warner Robins or Calhoun. I don't remember. I think it was Warner Robins. It's really bad when you know where all the Buc-ee's are. It's really bad. And you live in a state that has a grand total of 0 Buc-ee's. For now, we're supposed to get ours in April of 2026 outside of Huber Heights, off of 70. Expect me to do a lot of content from there when it opens. So we that was just a get some food, get some gas, hit the bathroom, get the hell out of Dodge. I'm starring some questions as I see them. Mika asking me questions that I don't know how to answer. I don't know who's going to camp. I've only been home for 4 days, 5 days. I go to camp, I cover camp. I couldn't tell you anybody who's going to camp. I just can't keep track of it. It's 2027s, 2028s, 2029s. I am doing just fine staying on track with who the 2026s are and the top end 2027s. So we certainly talked to a lot of kids who were like, well, I'm going to, on the 26s, some of them will be on campus for their officials during the camp period. So we'll see them on golf carts. They may go and hang out at camp for a little bit, certainly not working out. They're on their officials, but they'll be here. Certainly talked to some 27s who said they were going to go, but that just, I just didn't retain it. I didn't retain it because I was already on the next drive. I did everything I could to pay attention to what everybody said, but somebody could have mixed the lottery numbers in there and I would not have picked it up. I'm picking up high points of these are the schools I like, yada, yada, yada. I have this tie to Ohio or that tie to Ohio or no ties to Ohio. Yeah, I've watched Ohio State my whole life. I go all the way back to watching Justin Fields, and then I feel really old, really, really old when somebody can only go back to Justin Fields or CJ Stroud. So, I guess since I talked about it, I'll hit Mika's thing. Arthur Scott, Caden Turner, Elijah Durham-Smith, and Tyrell O'Neal planning to camp for us anytime this summer. No idea. I don't know. Honestly, I don't follow it that closely to know who the campers are. I just don't. Even 20 years ago, I didn't follow it that closely. If I see you at camp, I see you at camp. But it's such a different situation than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Classes are largely full. Like the 26 class, we know the board. We know what the board looks like largely. Sure, 26 may get offered here or there along the way as names fall off the board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the days of a Terry McLaurin happening, we want to see you in camp. Scratch that. We want to see you in 2 camps, and you need to go out and catch 500 passes a day, even if it's your mother throwing you the football. And we want to see where you stand at that point. Those stories are not going to happen anymore. I mean, never say never. 1 in 10 million. I mean, but that's not what we're dealing with now. So for me, Kevin Noon, not me, Kevin Noon of Buckeye Huddle. For me, Kevin Noon, I can't process that. The brain is full. The brain is full, and if I learn who's coming to camp, I'm going to forget how to put shoes and socks on or something like that. For every new piece of information I get, I lose 2 pieces of information. So I'm just not. So I hate to sound ill-prepared, but it's not something that I follow. And honestly, it's not something that excites me. So recruiting excites me, but camping is hot. Often it's a cluster, and to Ohio State's credit, they've really changed the way that they handle their camps. It used to be 6 all-day camps, and by all day I mean 9 to 3 or whatever, and the situation is, it's 800 kids out there. How the hell are you supposed to be able to keep track of that when they don't have names on For a while, they used to pin numbers on them, like marathon numbers with safety pins that would fall off, and they wouldn't give you a roster. So, oh, that kid's 124. Well, who's 124? Well, I don't know. He's 124. So I didn't, and now they don't even do that, but they have split it up to where there is a morning session and there's an afternoon session. And the morning session may be big man camp, offensive line, defensive line. And then the afternoon session may be the other session. Now, I do see Mika talking about them being underrated guys that deserve a look. Now, if they're 26s, they're shit out of luck. I mean, I don't really think that it's going to be a case of that Ohio State is going to completely change its board. Now, if they're 27s or 28s, that's fine. There's time. There's time to get there. But even with that, you still have to live by the camp, or you have to live by the recruiting rules if you're an in-state kid. And I don't know if these are in-state kids. I don't know, because I don't know any of those names. But you can't offer somebody, you can't just go nuts and say, okay, well, you're offered, because the kid says, I'm in, and the kid goes to Glenville or Winton Woods or to Dublin Kaufman or whatever, and you're like, well, we really weren't ready to take you at this point. Then things get to be, ugly. So you're just not going to do that. So I don't know if these are 26 kids, but I'm just going to say, if you're not real, if you're an in-state kid and you're not offered as a 26 at this point, it's probably not happening, in my opinion. Things can change. A Dominic Kirk situation is not that far removed. So I'm just being honest, Mika. I'm just being honest. If you're not getting everything from Ohio State, if Ohio State is not on the verge of offering you, things aren't changing. Things aren't changing. Who are you saying no to? Are you going to not take Deuce Gerald's to take an in-state kid? No. Are you not going to take Tyler Atkinson to take an in-state kid? That you're sitting here May 20th and you're not sold on? No. So it's just dims the brakes. That's just how this works. And I think that it's a case of, I think these kids know the score. So maybe they come out to be evaluated by Kent, Akron, Ohio University, who will probably have Coach Toledo, who will probably have coaches at the Ohio State camp. But I think that chasing the brass ring of, well, if I go and I bust my ass and I do this and just outwork everybody, I'm going to get that offer and I'm going to commit, and punch and pie will be had by all. Those days are done. They're done. That's not how it's going to work anymore. Sitting here drinking my Powerade. I went and had Skyline for lunch. They have a new Toledo with Fritos and cream cheese, and I didn't get it. I didn't get one of those. So they look good, but Skyline is already enough of a gut bomb. Changing it up like that really sounds like a gut bomb. So I didn't do that. But the point I was going to make with drinking the Powerade, I'm not a Pepsi guy at all. But when Skyline switched from Pepsi to Coke, that was difficult, because the perfect complementary drink to Skyline is Mountain Dew, to me at least. With Coke, it's just not right. It's a crime against God. It really is. It's a crime against all things holy. Whatever you call God, it's not right. So the only thing they have there that kind of works with Skyline is the Powerade Blue, or as we just call it at my Pickerington store, the Blue Drink. So that's what I have right now, just to kind of keep me sane or whatever. Now, all right, Wingman Ted saying, if we teach Kevin a new trick, this means he'll forget he doesn't want to eat 2 jars of pickles again. I will never do that again. Now, I can walk into my fridge and pull out 2 jars of pickles. That doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and eat them all. And don't forget, there were super chats involved there. I'm not your trained dancing bear. But if there's money involved, I may reconsider, but the pickles are off the table. Never again. Never, ever again. There's no amount of new knowledge imparted upon me that is going to get me to do that stunt again. And I still go back to doing that. And people are like, put 20 of them in your mouth at a time. It'll just be quicker. Yeah, quicker to my demise. There was just no way. Now, sure, Joey Chestnut certainly has never heard of my 2-pickle stunt, because that's just nothing in the competitive eating space. And he probably would just, finish it in like a minute 30. I needed an hour. Also, I was kind of taking my own sweet time. It was not about good television. I wanted to be done with the damn thing. I wanted to be done with it. But I also wasn't going. There were bets. People were making bets, side bets, that I was going to do it. I wasn't going to do it. And I wasn't going to let the people down who put money on me. I wasn't going to let them down, but I also wasn't going to kill myself with sodium shock and just do it all at once. So that was terrible. But what was I talking about prior to getting into the recruiting aspect and the camp aspect thing? Now, I do want to clarify. It's not that I hate going to camps. I don't hate going to camps. I get to hang out with my friends, at least on the recruiting side. A lot of the team coverage guys don't go. Huddle's different. Tom, Tony, myself, Mark. Certainly this year, Berm will be there as well. I mean, we may not all be at the same camps every single day. We're kind of getting into the season of where people might be taking vacations and stuff like that. I don't have any money. I'm not going on vacation. I mean, my vacation may be mowing the lawn again. So it's not that I dislike the camps. I just can't keep track of it. I really can't. Now, as for Mark and Berm, they can, but that's where their focus is. Their focus is on these prospects. But, I will say, and I love Mika to death, but Ohio State can't take 70 kids a cycle. Some kids just aren't going to go to Ohio State. I could have, I'm just going to use this as an example, but there's no truth to it. I could have wanted to go to Juilliard. It didn't mean I was going to get to go to Juilliard. It doesn't necessarily mean that I was going to fit the bill that they were looking for there. I certainly had my choices of college as from on the academic side. I did have some offers to go and play tennis at Division III schools. They didn't, they couldn't offer me scholarships athletically. So, there were workarounds or whatever. Just didn't end up happening. I will jump in here. We need DL depth. Sink or swim. They're going to have to sink or swim with this. And if they can't hit their number this year, then they're never going to fucking hit their number. They're just not. I mean, if they can't hit their number this year, I don't know what to say, but that doesn't mean that you lower what it is you're looking for to hit the number. You have to, the second you lower your standards, and it's very cold, what I'm saying. The way I'm saying it is very cold, but it's very true. If you sit there and you start taking warm bodies to hit your number, you're going to be in trouble. You're not going to stay at the same level. You have got to sit there and maintain the standard. And if you can't maintain the standard, then you've got to look at yourself and you got to do one of a couple of things. You either have to lower your standard, which I do not recommend, or you have to reevaluate the way that you're going out trying to accumulate prospects. So while I don't disagree with Mika about needing the DL depth, I vehemently disagree of lowering yourself just to put bodies in there, because I can sit there and go through the years, and I'm not going to clown on any kids and say that kid never had an opportunity or whatever, but I've seen it. I've seen it through the years plenty of times. That kid's he ain't never going to play here, and he doesn't. So what are you gaining there? Nothing. There's nothing to gain in bringing somebody in just for the sake of bringing somebody in. Now, this is different than the breaking news today. Berm brought it to the board. Ohio State is bringing in a fourth quarterback, somebody who's immediately eligible. He was at Houston Christian. His name is Eli Brickhandler. He's he is a backup. I think his career numbers are 7 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He has 2 years of eligibility. You know what he's not going to do? Transfer out. He's not going to transfer out. He's going to be somebody who's going to give him numbers. You're going to have Julian saying, and you're going to have Lincoln Keenholz playing catch with each other. Now Tavian St. Clair has somebody to play catch with, and that's no affront to Mason Maggs or any of the other backup walk-on quarterbacks or whatever, but you've got to have somebody who can run the scout team. You can't sit there and throw your third stringer to the wolves being your full go scout team quarterback with the length of what the season was last year, could be this year, et cetera, et cetera. You have to handle personnel management differently. You have to be able to do that. Now, the sad reality is where we are now with the portability, if you will, it's going to be hard to keep numbers. The fact that Ohio State had the number of quarterbacks it did last year, for as long as it did, was the outlier. You're going to have Aaron Nolan leaves to go to South Carolina to go behind Lenora Sellers, who is only a little bit older than Aaron Nolan. Now, Aaron Nolan's path is for Sellers to be 3 and done, and then to have some experience in the program and win the position. And I wish Aaron Nolan all the success in the world. But it doesn't change the fact that there are so many guys that are leaving. It's hard to keep 4 scholarship quarterbacks. And that's why you have to get a Chris Chugginoff, Gunnar Hoke, Tristan Gebbia type of quarterback. Now with Eli, he probably has less experience than you want, but if Ohio State's having to trot him out there to play minutes of consequence, we're having a very different conversation at that point. We're having a very, very different conversation at that point. That means they have busted through 3 other quarterbacks, one way, shape, or form. So this is somebody that you can really put in and say, you're going to handle running our scout team. You're going to be an elder statesman in the room. Julian Sayin is still a young pup. Lincoln Keenholz is a little bit older. Tavian St. Clair is a first-year player. You need to have somebody who at least has been in the collegiate game, even if it's been limited, and what his results have been. Now, a thing about Houston Christian used to be Houston Baptist, or so I believe. Somebody will probably jump and say, no, that's not true, but that is what I believe was the case. I think HBU became HCU. People were like, well, what is that? Is that an NAIA school? No, it's just a rebranded school in the last couple of years. So let's kind of go through some of the questions and comments. Again, I have some other things to get into that I'm sure that will elicit more curse words out of me. Again, I'm just not in a great mood right now. Now, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing the show. I'm not going to let that stop me from being friendly on the show. You guys make this all possible. If I come in and I'm just a total jerk, people will be like, wow, I got better stuff to do with my time. I could sit there and, I could watch, I don't even know what's on daytime TV anymore. I guess we're not in the days of Jerry Springer and Ricky Lake or anything like that, but I'm not going to do that now. Wingman Ted, will Berm join the swing next year, or hasn't that been planned out yet? I was willing this year to give up my spot to Berm. Now, Berm was not announced until we were 3 days into the trip. So there were a lot of people in our YouTube comments who were like, where's Berm? You should just sit there and be like, that's Berm's music. Well, what are we going to do? Drag him for several days? Now, also remember, he is doing his arrangement with us is much more on the written side. That doesn't mean he won't appear on the video content, but it's not going to be frequent. He is 1,000% writing for Buckeye Huddle. There's, great stories, great posts. I mean, definite reason to be a member over at Buckeye Huddle. We will not expand swing to 3 people. It's already difficult enough to do this with 2 people in the sense of sharing a room, sharing hotel rooms for 3 weeks with a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old and everything else, most hotel rooms do not sleep more than two. You can go to a Residence Inn and do stuff, but we're in a lot of places where it's like you're either staying at the Hampton Inn, the Travel Lodge, or the Fairfield Inn, or something worse, America's Best Value Inns or something like that, Knights Inn, some garbage like that. I don't, now if we go out and Bucky sponsors us, or one of our viewers, run is like with Camping World. And Camping World wants to sit there and cut us a check for however much to be our presenting sponsor, and we just have money to burn on this project, things would be different. Then, maybe we would look at some things or whatever. But generally, Southern Swing is something that is always talked about internally 12 months a year, but I don't think we get serious about it until about 10 weeks out. And then and even then, tell you how things are, I did not know for sure the day that we were leaving on Southern Swing until about 4 days prior. Now, Mark may have mentioned it to me and it flew over my head. Maybe we weren't sure, but I'm scrambling at the end to be like, I got to get the lawn mowed. I got to get laundry done. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to clean out the fridge. All these things I have to do before leaving the house for 3 weeks. So to Wingman Ted's point, no, we've not really discussed any of that. I would not be devastated if I were not on Swing next year. I'm just going to be honest. I'll be 54 at that point. It's a lot of miles. It's a lot of miles and everything else. And while I certainly consider myself to be in the upper crust of people who follow recruiting, I'm not carrying a candle to Mark and to Berm. They know so much more about it than I do. If that is the decision, that's fine. I certainly can find other things to do within the framework of Buckeye Huddle that will keep me busy. Asian Posh Doreen, who is a member with us here on the YouTube channel. I guess it's called a subscription. It's 99 cents a month. You get your name is green on, at least in the way that I see it on my panel. It's just a real nice way to just be able to kick a little support to us. How was my time with Mark? My favorite player I met. We'll go backwards on here. The favorite player I met, that's difficult because I met so many good players. We're really kind of splitting hairs. And the thing is like, I'm meeting you at your school, whether it's after practice, before practice, a weightlifting session, at your athletic period at school. I'm not necessarily seeing these guys in a situation of where I'm getting to know more than just from an interview standpoint. And if I sit there and I say, like I've been talking to Deuce Geralds forever. I mean, I really like talking to Deuce Geralds. But what's the difference between my conversation with Deuce Geralds and my conversation with Corbin Fordham? What's the difference between my conversation with 2027 running back Amir Brown and I don't know, one of the linemen that, Felix Ojo? I mean, there is a situation of where, this kid plays a position of need. So was he your favorite kid to talk to? It doesn't necessarily change anything. So they were all good kids. I don't really have anybody I was like, oh, that was pulling teeth. I certainly have done in my long time in this industry. I've had to do interviews with kids on the phone that I get out of it. I'm like, that was awful. That was awful. And I'm not here to dunk on kids, even though some of these kids that I'm talking about, we're talking about 15 years ago. They're not kids anymore. I'm not going to out them. Time with Mark was fine. Now, Mark is not a huge car talker, just not. It's just, one of those things of he's planning the trip and I'm trying to keep the car pointed in the right direction. Listen to some podcasts, listen to the Daniel Tosh podcast, several episodes of that, because even with the phone plugged in and the satellite radio, I think I listened to every alternative 80s song 3 times on the trip. So by the last week, I just needed to listen to something else. I could go a week at home and maybe go 15 miles over the course of 7 days. And, and we had to go from Orlando to, and speaking of Orlando, I saw Florida Buckeye posted something on the top. I need to get back to that. From Orlando to Jackson, Mississippi, that drive was crappy. Like coming back home, we went from North Dallas to Memphis. That drive was crappy. On the following day, we went from Memphis to Columbus. So, Mark and I have worked with each other for a long time. It's not like he hasn't heard all my dumb stories. He's heard all my dumb stories 5 or 6 times. So, it is what it is. And I appreciate the question. I mean, I don't know if there's just necessarily anything that came out from just car time that it's like, oh, wow, I have a totally different perspective on this, that, or the other, because, we've kind of said everything. I mean, Mark kind of laughed because I found a new energy drink that I really like. It's called C4. Well, apparently something I did not know is there is C4 extra strength, which I'm now calling C5. And it tastes horrific. It's horrible tasting. No, Red Bull doesn't do anything to me. Most of these other energy drinks don't do much, Monster or whatever. Some of them taste good, like especially if you have like a fruit punch one or whatever. I enjoy it, but I don't get a charge. C4 on its own will give me a charge. This C5 is dangerous. I mean, I can sit there and I can feel the blood flowing through my body when I have a can of it, because it is just that. It's like, I don't feel like I'm drunk. I'm not impaired. I'm not, I'm not making my life is full of making bad decisions. I'm not making bad decisions because of the energy drink. But I also knew that there was a cutoff point. Like, I could not take one after XYZ time of night or I'm not sleeping, period. So that was kind of a funny moment. Florida Buckeye here, just hitting 2 things here. Yo, Kevin and Buckeye Faithful, so glad you guys made it home safely after an off the hook tour. Thanks again for your content. Followed up with just sitting on the lanai, looking at the Florida Buckeye Bar and Grill patio, reminiscing on great times. We have the opportunity to hang out with Florida Buckeye. Unfortunately, his son, who is also a member of Buckeye Huddle, was unable to make it due to a scheduling conflict. We had brisket. We had the sweet heat baked beans that were really good. I'm not going to get into the secrets. I'm not here to put Florida Buckeyes cooking secrets out there, but they were very good. And then, of course, it was the second time that we've been to his place that we've had a warm potato salad. The talk is that we're going to have steaks next year, which I'm excited about. Don't get me wrong. I'm a sucker for a great brisket, but, talk about tomahawk steaks certainly piques my interest. So it was great catching up with Florida Buckeye and his lovely wife as well for our stop there. I did get chewed up by mosquitoes, by the way. I don't care that we had 3 giant citronella candles. I am like key lime pie for mosquitoes. They just love me. And it wasn't that bad. Like the day after we left, I had like 1 mosquito bite that I had noticed. I'm like, well, that's mildly annoying. The next day I had like 70 of them, and I didn't go out that following day. So it must have been a slow burn. So, I don't know. I'm going to have to sit there and douse myself in off or something like that, because they chewed the living hell out of me. Let me see what else we've got going on here. I lost track of where I was, but I wanted to get back to where we were. All right. I found the pickle talk, which of course, Doug Shepard, I was legitimately worried about Kevin's health consuming that much sodium. I'm not a big sodium guy. The only places like I add salt, I'll add salt to like a salad sometimes, depending on what the dressing is. There's just some dressings that are going to have more than enough salt content. And sometimes if I'm being good, I'm having a vinaigrette. I'm trying to make it to 54. I'm trying to make it to 60, whatever. And it's like, this thing is bland as heck. So I'm going to add salt to that. And I always add salt to my salsa. Salsa, I mean, like any tomato, if you're going to sit there and eat a tomato, which I don't, I'm one of those weirdos. I don't eat tomato slices or whole tomato or cherry tomatoes, but I will eat salsa. I will eat tomato products, but I just don't like a tomato straight up. I always put salt on my salsa. Let me keep going here. Let me go through here. Wingman Ted, Joe Germain was my first quarterback of memory. Yeah, I certainly remember all that. I wasn't a big college football fan as a young kid. I didn't, I could go back and honestly, if you talk to 10-year-old Kevin, I certainly could have told you where Ohio was on a map because I was a nerd, but I didn't have any beliefs that I was going to Ohio State or was ever going to live in the state of Ohio. I'm like, well, I live in California. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, and I'm going to sit there and be a pro surfer or something like that. So I couldn't tell you my first collegiate quarterback of memory. The problem is when I got to Ohio State, they just had some crappy quarterbacks. Kirk Herbstreit. I mean, that should just give you an idea of the quarterbacking dreck that I had to watch as an undergrad at Ohio State. It didn't stop me from drinking at the games, before the games, after the games, the bye weeks, the off season. Basically, I had a lot of fun in college. But Jermaine, the Jermaine Stanley Jackson story is always of great interest to me, just how Ohio State, John Cooper did not handle it the best way, and how a locker room could get really divided over some things. So it's an interesting time for you, Ted, to be aware of quarterbacking and everything else. Probably, I'm assuming you were pretty young at that point. You weren't aware of all the other ramifications that were involved, but it was something. Wingman Ted, Buc-ee's was before recruiting. I did not get beaver nuggets. I meant to bring it down. I bought a beaver nuggets pillow. You're going to have to watch the video that I may start working on today. I may start working on tomorrow. I bought some items that I normally wouldn't buy at Buc-ee's. I bought them. I didn't have the site buy them for me. I bought them out of my own pocket. And it was interesting. I'm looking forward to the video. I wanted to actually use a big camera, but even shooting something with a GoPro, you get a lot of heads and people like looking at you and everything else. And if we would have brought in an actual video camera, who knows what we would have gotten. But for the amount of videos that have been shot at Buc-ee's from day one to where we are now, I don't think that anybody in management bats an eye. They just, any good news is going to be great for them. Doug Shepard Sr. kids not on Ohio State's radar for 26. If they aren't, tough luck. Again, it's just a case of I am a big advocate for all these players. I want them to all be successful, to all fulfill the dreams that they've had, but I'm also a realist. That you're not everybody is going to get the dream offer, whether it's Ohio State or Notre Dame or whoever. It just not going to happen for everybody, but it doesn't mean that opportunity is not there. It doesn't matter that you don't necessarily get to go to the quote unquote flagship school in your state. Plenty of guys, go on and have very successful NFL careers when they, have to go out there and they have a chip on their shoulder because they didn't have the opportunity that they thought they were going to get. Let me keep scrolling here. All right, I'm finally caught up. Wingman Ted, speaking of DL depth, how did we lose Hero Canoe to Texas? Is there something going on there? Because he should have gotten a lot of playing time this year if he stayed. Texas had a very aggressive offer. Texas signed like 5 interior defensive linemen in the portal this year. So, you're just going to have a case of that. And if a school comes in with an offer that you're unable or unwilling to match, and I'm not saying that this is 100% what the situation was there, but if you're not able to match. I mean, it's not a matter of Texas came in and, was able to do, it was apples to apples or whatever. I mean, yes, Ohio State probably in retrospect would love to have Hero Canoe in the mix, but it didn't happen. And I can say without any doubt that if Ohio State were, really like in love with any of the portal defensive tackles that were out there in that portal cycle, we would have heard more. That's not to say that Ohio State's going to win every bidding battle, that Ohio State is going to be every kid's, dream destination. But I have on pretty good authority that Ohio State, while there were some kids that piqued interest, I don't think Ohio State was all in on anybody. Now, that doesn't change the fact that Ohio State is incredibly thin on defensive tackle once you get past Caden McDonald, Edric Houston. This is a make or break year for like a Jason Moore. And that's not to say that if Jason Moore doesn't like completely fly off the charts that his time in Ohio is done. No. But this is a pivotal year for like a Jason Moore, for some of these other kids to be able to continue the machine, to be able to be the next guy to step into these roles. So we all look at the portal and say, well, you have to go to the portal and be able to do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. Are you going, because you have to bring in a kid at this dollar figure. Now, any kid that's currently on the team making less than that dollar figure, do you renegotiate to keep everybody happy? You're not going to be able to keep numbers silent. We're talking about kids. I mean, yes, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. There's still going to be conversation. So every time you bring in somebody from the portal, you have to make sure that you have all of your due diligence done, that you have everything kind of on lockdown. Because look, if I'm a fourth string kid who's, barely hanging on or whatever, I'm probably not getting any NIL in the first place. I'm not going to be that concerned about a guy coming in and making a good amount of money in NIL and feeling like, yeah, he took my job. That's not necessarily the case. But if I'm somebody who's a 1 or a 2 and you bring in somebody, how, butterfly effect, ripples and everything like that, how is that going to fly? And this is a good point too, and I keep forgetting this with Doug Shepard. Here's limited what he can make being on a student visa. Ohio State plays by the rules. I'm sure an oil man in Texas could slide him a nice big bag. I always, not that I forget that Hero Canoe is German and, is a German national here, not somebody just of German descent who was born in the States. He wasn't. There certainly were some rules there and everything else. And while I'm not willing to go down the rabbit hole and say that anything was done in a shady nature or anything like that, Ohio State certainly was not going to be somebody that was going to, play outside of the lines. That's not what Ohio State was going to do in that instance. Let me see. Asian Pastorine, gummy time. I took 2 sleep gummies last night. I must have taken them too late. I was still up at 4:30 in the morning. But when I finally fell asleep, I slept to like 11. And so I'm not tired, but I could still feel that I hadn't slept the gummies off last night. So I've got to get better about it. But the problem is that sometimes I take a sleep gummy and it kicks in 15 minutes. And I can't take a gummy when I still have an hour's worth of work to do and have it just wreck me, and then I don't get the work done. I have to work when I'm motivated. And motivation is hard to find sometimes. She adds with that 97.1 has berm too. Yeah, there is certainly some broadcasting with 97.1 and with 10 TV Plus with Jeremy and Austin Ward. Again, there are all sorts of deals in place that have certain stipulations and everything else. And look, we're only 3 weeks into this whole situation, less than 3 weeks into this whole situation. We're still we're still seeing our way. And I get a lot of posts. I see a lot of comments in YouTube. Where's this? Where's that? Some people trying to, say that I shouldn't. Well, Berm should just step into Noon's role, and and Noon can go hit the portal. Well, fuck you, the people who say that. I mean, I don't need to hit the portal. I'm not looking for another job. So you got that. What else do we got? What else do we got here? How much money do I expect Tavian to get from Tractor Supply Company doing TSC ads as another TSC? With Cade Stover getting an ag bump, I could see it being possible if it's not a missed opportunity. Tavian St. Clair, the second he becomes a starting quarterback at Ohio State, I think we're going to see some things change at that point. We don't necessarily need to be concerned that somebody is not having, getting all the NIL money when they're a true freshman at this point. I still think that, Bell Fountain Ford and, whatever are probably already in on Tavian. But, I'm taking a lighthearted comment from Wingman Ted and trying to go full Jim Cramer on it or whatever. But yeah, somebody from Tractor Supply Company certainly needs to be aware at that point. Not that TSC and TSC each need each other to make either of them relevant, but it would be a good tie-in. Would definitely be a good tie-in. I want to congratulate Wingman Ted for becoming a YouTube member. Again, as I said, really easy. There's, if you're watching us on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, to do that, 99 cents a month. I mean, we talk about a month over at Buckeye Huddle being less than the price of a crummy pizza. I don't know what you can get for 99 cents. I don't know. I mean, I can't say a cup of coffee. Went to enough Starbucks on the trip. A cup of coffee at Starbucks is like $6. Can't get a soda at a restaurant. I mean, I guess if you had a time machine, you could go back to when McDonald's had 99-cent any size sodas in like the drive-through or whatever. But those are $1.49 now. So you, for less than an any size soda at McDonald's, you too for a month can help support us here on our YouTube channel. Wingman Ted says, I'll try out the leprechaun text. Just glad it's not blue. Doug Shepard says he's colorblind. I don't see any difference. I'm red-green colorblind, but I see green to a certain extent, but I wonder if I see green the same way that somebody who's not colorblind sees it. I don't know. I can see reds and greens. It's really like browns. A lot of times, like certain dark, like mahogany brown or mahogany, or like a red with like a mahogany tinge to it or whatever, looks just like brown to me. And like stoplight or like green lights on, like when you're driving, it just looks like white light to me. So who knows? It was enough that I couldn't be a pilot, but I'm also too scatterbrained that I wouldn't want to fly with me. Doug says he has severe color blindness. It sounds like you've got it much worse than I do for certain at that point. Here we go with David Greenshield. Good to see you. Any thoughts on loss of some in-state recruits lately? Are we not prioritizing the in-state guys enough? I'm assuming that you're talking about Jameer Perez, who committed to Florida. Ohio State did offer there. How do I put this? If he were a top flight, we have to land this guy. Am I saying that Ohio State 100% lands him? No. Guys get away. But if you're not sold on somebody, if you're not completely sold on him, but just because he's from your state, why are you going to sit there and go all out? Why are you going to go balls to the wall to land somebody that maybe you're not sold on for one reason or another? I understand how important Glenville is. Ohio State didn't do Perez dirty. Ohio State wasn't dishonest in its recruitment of him, and that's what drove him to Florida or anything like that. Florida prioritized him. We're always going to have debates on how much emphasis do you put on recruiting in state versus out of state? Well, we certainly saw Ohio State have success with the in-state model under Jim Tressel, And we certainly have seen Ohio State have success with the out-of-state model with Urban Meyer and now with Ryan Day. And it's hard to sometimes fathom that we're talking almost 25 years ago for the 02 championship that Ohio State won under Jim Tressel. A lot of things have changed at that point. I don't think Ohio State can compete nationally with an 75% in-state strategy, meaning if you have your recruiting class that you're going to do everything you can to fill those spots 75% with Ohio kids and 25% out of state. That's just not going to work at this point. And I think that the talent in Ohio is really good. Now, I think to add to David's point, we're also Trey McNutt, somebody like that, Dorian Brew, who I don't necessarily put in there because he moved to Texas, moved outside of Houston, but that was 11th hour or whatever. You're just going to have some guys that are going to go elsewhere. It is what it is. I can guarantee you that in Georgia, there are probably people having the same argument of why is it that so many Georgia kids that UGA wants are getting away? It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, the same thing could be said in Florida. We talked to a few kids. They may have had one of the big three schools on their list or none. How do you sit there and have somebody who grows up in Florida who doesn't have Miami, Florida, and Florida State on their list? It's just the changing times, the changing nature. No, not having a fire here. Just the monthly check on my Nest smoke alarm, so don't worry about that. It's just the changing nature of how recruiting works, and it's a valid point. It's a valid point that David's making, but it's not. If a guy's not being prioritized, he's not being prioritized for a reason. Now, is it that you don't feel that he necessarily has what it takes to come in and, be the man? Is it that you're just not jibing with the guy? I mean, I don't know. And I don't want to sit there and make it sound like I'm talking about player X or player Y or player Z. But there are reasons why you don't prioritize a guy, why you're not necessarily going after a guy. It just happens. It just happens, and it kind of is what it is, and you just kind of go with it. I mean, again, I don't think anybody's lamenting it. I don't think anybody's pissed over it, but you can't sit there and go out and land Devin Sanchez out of Houston, Texas, and maybe pass on a corner out of your own state and be like, well, I really wish they would have gotten the in-state guy. Devin Sanchez, I'm not saying that he has Jeffrey Okudah, collegiate player, written all over him, but I'm also not saying, and I'm not saying that. So you have to, it's why Mark Pantoni and his personnel department are one of the best out there in being able to go out and identify and really get into the brass tacks, if you will, of what makes a player and what doesn't. And I'm sorry, there are going to be times that Ohio State's going to get burnt on it. Period. It's just, you can't take them all. And we're gonna see it, and we're gonna have the podcast of, I can't believe they passed on so and so. That kid went out there and kicked our butts for 60 minutes. Well, as they say, that happens. I mean, it's going to be there, and it's going to be really easy to find the kid that you did take instead of the in-state kid. And if he doesn't work out to 110% of his ability, then it's really going to get ugly. I can't believe that they took player A over player X, and player X did this. Well, nothing is an absolute. So it is what it is. I would be more concerned about the kid that Ohio State somehow did not evaluate or whatever, who just absolutely blows up and does this. But if you've done the evaluations and you've done everything and you still decide not to pursue them, I mean, you've made your bed at that point. You made your bed and you got to lie in it, and you just got to accept it. So there you go. Mika Hanna, it's awful. C4+. I mean, I have 2 in the fridge right now. probably drink them during camp season, on a day where I wake up and I'm just like, I just do not want to go cover a camp. And then I'll drink that and I'll be bouncing off the walls. The regular C4s are pretty good. Now, anything that is sugar-free and has artificial sweeteners, I don't do well with most artificial sweeteners. They give me a headache. They give me, all sorts of things that are just not great. I mean, I hate most of them. It was always a thing of people are like, well, why don't you drink Diet Coke, fatty? Well, I don't really like the artificial sweetener in it or whatever. I'd rather just not drink a soda altogether. Like I've ever said that. But I would just rather not drink one altogether than to sit there and have one with this crappy aspartame or whatever that I hate. And, it is what it is. And Coca-Cola went and screwed everything up when it reformulated Coke Zero to turn it into Coke Zero sugar or whatever. It's just Coke crap at this point. I hate it. It's awful. So if I'm going to drink a Coke, it's going to be a fully leaded Coke. And it was funny because there'd be people who would be like, I'd go out and they were like, well, I ordered you a Coke Zero. I'm like, that's not a Coke Zero. That's Coke Zero sugar, and it tastes like butt. I don't like it. Wingman Ted says, try Rain. They're amazing. My personal favorite flavor is the white gummy bear, but they have a lot of good ones. They definitely wake me up and get me going when I need it. I'll check it out. I've only been on a C4 kick for 5 months. I didn't discover them until the playoff run, so I guess 6 months. Again, it's just a matter of the C4 plus, the C5 is gross. I mean, and it's just too much. It's too much, but we were stopping in a lot of little, Pilot, and Flying J's in the South, and they didn't have a ton of options. And I wasn't going to sit there and have a Monster, which I knew did nothing. They don't have any impact on me whatsoever. Mika wants to flip Jameer Perez. I have no dog in the fight. I don't know. Great kid. Is he a great player? I mean, he's a one tech. I mean, he's 330. But again, do you want to land him because he's an Ohioan, or do you want to land him because he's a Glenvillian? A Glenvillan? Probably not the right term. Or do you want to land him because he's truly a great kid? I mean, what is the motivation there on that one? And I don't know Jameer Perez from Adam. I mean, I'm aware of him. I certainly know who he was. I certainly was hearing the trends 2-3 days leading up to his Florida commitment that was what the writing on the wall was. But Mika, I just think that you have an unnatural attachment to Ohio players. And I want to know what your methodology is on this one. I want you to show your work. Because is it because you just want every Ohio kid to go to Ohio State, or hours of film breakdown and you know better than Larry and Ryan and Mark Pantoni? It's at all. So show your work on that one before we get off the air. Asian Pastorine has now been a member for 2 months, and that is fantastic. We appreciate that. If she wasn't the first one, she was one of the first 2 or 3. We don't have it. We don't push it a lot. We don't push it. I don't want to come out and ask for super chats. I'm not a cyber beggar. Now, that doesn't mean during the season we're not going to ask for super chats at some points. But I've stopped watching shows if they just ask for super chats too much, because it's cyber panhandling, and I don't necessarily like it. But you're in a catch-22, and we got to make a living, and we got to do this stuff. So send us a super chat, get you to the front of the line if you want to be a member. It's a nice, less showy way of being able to support us. But the number one way you can support us is by being a member over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. $13.99 a month. Join Tom, Tony, and myself covering the team. Mark and Berm covering recruiting. Andrew Ellis, really a Swiss Army knife, does a lot of everything. Ross Fulton and his team of experts breaking down X's and O's. We're working on how we're going to utilize them best this year, so expect some new content with that as well. All of that at Buckeye Huddle, plus the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse Columbus. One of the most relaxed and awesome Buckeye communities out there, if not the best. Yeah, we'll say that, the best. I've been part of a lot of them. It's the best. So check us out there. before we get into the throes of getting ready for defending the national championship here in the 25 season. Here we go. Here, we'll keep scrolling. Mika Hanna says that Krenzel was my first quarterback memory. Certainly remember Krenzel there too. And I mean that, there we're a little further along than Joe Germain here. There's some things here. Buckeye sticker, gold pants. I don't know if things are necessary because I saw Asian Posh Doreen with that too. I don't produce the show with the YouTube tools. I use a third-party platform, so I don't know if I see everything the way that you, our consumers, see it. So if there's something and I don't comment on it correctly, it's just because I'm not seeing it the way that you are. And I just can't necessarily, if I open up multiple platforms to do this, I'll be hopelessly confused at that point. Emily says, hey, how are you doing, Emily? Sorry that it's 2:42, so 23 minutes behind on my comments. The nature of the beast of doing a solo show. I came in, I said I'm going to do somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes or until my voice gives out. I certainly am kind of over punching some comments or whatever in terms of using my voice, so I'm already kind of losing my voice. Asian Posturine saying hi to Emily. Doug Shepard Sr. in the late 70s. I fell all the way up the steps on the west side of the stadium. Got a resounding round of applause when I landed. Yes, up the steps. I've seen footage of people doing that before. So while it's not a common occurrence, I definitely know what you're talking about. My sophomore year, I started my freshman year, I started at OSU Marion. So I did not have season tickets. I did go to a game. But my sophomore year is my first full year on campus, and we were up in 5C. So I'm surprised I just didn't fall off of 5C because I was such a mess back in those days. Son of Sarek says, I'm from the Rex Kern quarterback era. I started at Ohio State in 1989. I probably started watching Ohio State in like 87. Grew up a fan, and I use that term loosely, of a West Coast team. I want to talk a little there, and then we will jump in on the remaining comments that we have and questions. Again, Super Chats get you to the top, but we're not begging, but we're not turning them down either. What are your thoughts on Washington fans popping off on Twitter? I'm not sure everybody here is a huge Twitter person, X, whatever you want to call it. Washington fans, a couple, and again, you shouldn't let 3 or 4 people on a social media platform represent an entire group, whether it be sports or life or whatever. But there certainly are a couple of people acting like Washington invented noise when it comes to a football game. I was at the 2007 game where Ohio State drubbed Washington. Brandon Sane scored a late touchdown when it wasn't quite kneel down time, but it was student body left, student body right. And he went student body left, if I remember right, and nobody could bring him down. And Tressel was kind of upset that they scored because the Senator just wasn't about embarrassing opponents or whatever. He just was not, not his era. I mean, and again, we don't see a lot of people go out there vindictively trying to do that. A little bit of that. It wasn't all that loud. They're going to be in for a rude awakening when 40's high. 35% of that crowd is decked out in scarlet and gray. And the OHIO cheer is going through Husky Stadium in the fourth quarter when Ohio State is up 42-13 in that game. It's been an interesting phenomenon to watch 3 of the 4 West Coast teams come in and try and take the old, first day in prison mentality of finding the biggest guy in the yard and trying to jump him. SC has certainly done it. SC hasn't done diddly squat. To Oregon's credit, Oregon actually backed something up and beat Ohio State in Eugene. Granted, it was kind of a perfect storm in a lot of ways, but I'm not going to take the win away from Oregon because I'm not a win denier. And now you have Washington, a team that did go undefeated at home and couldn't win a game on the road, like no games on the road, thinking that Ohio State is going to come in there and suddenly crap down its leg because it's as loud as Michigan State. Maybe. But it's on the water. Well, unless all the fish are cheering, nobody gives a shit. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anything. So, again, you get some raconteurs out there that want to sit there and act like they're, representative of their fan base and this is going to happen or whatever. And then when it doesn't happen, they'll probably just accuse Ohio State of cheating or something. I don't know. But it's really just who the hell are you? You're not allowed to talk to your daddy like that. You shouldn't be talking to your daddy like that. Asian Posturine. Dayton will have a Buc-ee's. Yes, very excited about that. April of 26, I think, is when it's its targeted opening date. They're going to break ground, I think, in August of this year. I read like a blurb from an article, but again, I was not, I was doing 14 things at once, and that's a problem. I didn't necessarily grab onto all of that. Emily, I see we have a new quarterback. Very interesting. Again, this helps fill out the room. They now have 4 scholarship quarterbacks. I don't expect to see the new quarterback. By the way, I'm even having to go to the thing because I want to make sure I get his last name right. Eli Brickhandler. That's his name, from Houston Christian University. I don't think we're going to see Eli get any more action in games than Tristan Gebbia did, but it's important to have somebody to run your scout team. It's important to have somebody who is a little bit more of an elder statesman. Julian Sayin has had a touch of collegiate experience. Lincoln Kienholz has had a touch of collegiate experience. Tavian St. Clair has had 0 collegiate experience. You want to have somebody in there that at least can be like, oh yeah, I remember doing that. Granted, it was against Incarnate Word and whatever, and not against, I don't know. I'm not going to say Washington. To hell with those guys. I don't care about you. I don't even know. I don't even remember Ohio State's schedule. Wisconsin. I know they're going to Madison. I'm already looking forward to copious amounts of spotted cow beer, cheese curds, and brats. David Whalen, when is the team up north going to finally get its deserved punishment in Cheatergate? Your guess is as good as mine. We know, what is it, June 6th and June 7th is their Council of Infractions hearing. That ball can still be punted in terms of dates and, okay, you get 30 days to do this, and they get 90 days to do this, and there's 30 more days or whatever. Is it imminent? No. Is TUN, as you put it, going to sit there and come up with some other horse crap? We're going to suspend Sharon Moore for 2 more games as well. He won't be able to play in the father-son picnic, and he won't be able to coach for the open week. I mean, get out of here with your dumbass half measures. Let me just keep going through here. Mozart's Ghost is here. There you go. How are you doing, Mozart's Ghost? Great to see you. Anybody else that I have not singled out and said hello to as well, let me use this moment as saying hello. Again, y'all make this possible. If it weren't for you, I'd just be talking to myself, and I don't need a computer for that. Or talking to the cat who finally went to sleep instead of meowing and pissing me off. Let's just keep going through here. Emily, if we only had DB33 now, DB13, he's my guy though. Haha. Yeah, well, again, what you gonna do? I'm hoping that Devin Brown has a successful run after Ohio State. Well, I don't know what the situation is there. Is he going to be the 1? Is he going to be the 2 at his new location? It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to try and figure out. And guys, and I'm not blaming Devin Brown. Devin Brown not only put in his time at Ohio State, he stuck around and went through the playoff run, the championship run, was able to go to the White House with the team, do all of those types of things. Nothing but respect for Devin Brown and the way he handled his business, but you just don't know what awaits him around the corner. Let's just keep going through here as we're trying to catch up. Mozart's goes, saw today that Georgia and Florida will play in Atlanta. Lame. College football continues to sell out. That series jumped the shark when they win. The enlightened people said, we can't call it the world's largest cocktail party. That's not inclusive to beer and wine. I mean, that wasn't really what it was. It's just people are lame. It's a diminished series in terms of its lore because they sat there and let a bunch of idiots who don't like sports get in and get involved with it. And I mean, and sit there and do that. And if we're being honest too, some things have to happen as Jacksonville is trying to take the facilities in Jacksonville from being horrible to somewhat passable. If I were a Florida fan, I'd be pissed about it being in Atlanta. Just the proximity of Athens to Atlanta versus Gainesville to Atlanta. It's not that I don't think that Florida's going to leave tickets out of its allotment unfulfilled, but Christ, why not just play the game in Orlando? Just play the game in Orlando and get, I mean, unless it's a rotation, I don't even know. I don't. Florida is such an irrelevant program to me right now at this point. Yes, they just got a verbal commitment from Jameer Perez. Great. It is so irrelevant to me. And I only read about Georgia when another player gets busted for speeding. So maybe that's somewhere that I don't necessarily have. I don't put the energy in that I should. This does bring a good point, though. Talk about Notre Dame and USC. That series coming to an end, I guess, at some point. What was it? The jeweled shillelagh? But I guess that was offensive to other types of walking sticks and clubs and slapjacks and things of that nature that they took that name away. I'm not gonna yell at clouds and tell you to get off my lawn, but some people just need to. If you don't care about sports, then don't try to get involved in sports. I don't care about needlepoint, and I'm not going to sit there and get involved in anything like that. But USC and Notre Dame series, the concern of the longevity of how that could go on, and I'm all for the Big Ten, which now obviously includes USC, putting it to Notre Dame, and it's like, you're in or you're out. We're not going to keep giving you a stage if you're not going to join the league. And yeah, you can go back and say that, Notre Dame back in the 19 Dickety-aughts or whatever had the opportunity, and Fielding Yost at the team up north, didn't want them in there because he hated Catholics or whatever. I don't know what, I don't know what the history is there. I don't really care. But if Notre Dame, congratulations. You have your own TV deal that you don't have to share with anybody. You kind of have a gift in terms of the college football playoff of competing against yourself to get into the college football playoff. Yes, you're not going to be able to get a first round bye, but I don't think we're not going to see first round byes in 2026. You heard it here first. I mean, or second. You're not going to have byes, so that doesn't even really matter at that point. I mean, maybe they have a point of where they don't get to have a home game, but I don't think that's going to be the situation. And a home game against Indiana, I don't think they're going to change the situation. Why the hell are we coddling a brand that a lot of people don't care about? This isn't 1940. People were going across country on the train, and you only had Notre Dame broadcasts on the radio. They were the only real national team. We're 80-some years beyond that now. We're 80-some years beyond that. Nobody cares. I can't say full disclosure, I don't like Notre Dame. It's not like I don't like the athletes at Notre Dame. I don't like Notre Dame fans. They're assholes. I don't like them. Most of them. So you made the championship game, but you also made the championship game because you had the second easiest draw in retrospect in the college football playoffs. And you were able to beat the team that had the easiest draw in the semifinals in Penn State. One of these things isn't like the other when you look at the path that each of the teams took to get to the championship game in Atlanta. There is absolutely no reason. And Tony Petitti, call me if you're watching. One final offer, and if that doesn't happen to Notre Dame, if they don't accept it, screw them. Call their bluff. Go to the SEC, Notre Dame. I dare you to go to the SEC. Talk about a terrible culture fit. I dare you. I could care less. I could care less. I have no interest in watching Notre Dame Vanderbilt or Notre Dame Alabama. I don't care. I don't. And all I care about is that everybody has a similar path. Notre Dame holding on to this belief that anybody gives a shit about them is stupid, and that they get this preferred path to get into the playoff. No. The SEC is finally getting to the point of where it's going to get to 9 league games, and we're getting closer to having some sort of parity in terms of the path that everybody has to get to the top of the mountain. And then you still have Notre Dame, who won't share its toys with anybody. It's money, and do any of that just because once upon a time, Newt Rockne was on the sidelines, and NBC wanted to be in the college football game so bad that it overpaid for a team that is largely shadows. So to hell with them. Let me keep going here. I know that I'm falling way behind. We're closing in. We're at an hour 20 at this point. Asian Posturing. I'm one who does not cry about them. We want Sanchez and Pettyjohns. Again, it's a case of, back to the recruiting issue, you have to decide what your path is. You have to decide who's going to get it done. Ohio State under Jim Tressel largely had teams built to win the Big Ten, but could not get that championship. They won a lot of bowl games under Jim Tressel. I am not here to say bad things about Jim Tressel. One, because I don't feel that way. And two, that's not good for my viewership to go out and say bad things about a beloved piece of Ohio State history. But let's go back to one. I don't have anything ill to say about him. But 06, 07, losing to Florida, losing to LSU, Ohio State was just a couple of horses short in those games. I mean, still, if Brian Robisky catches that touchdown pass, that's like, what? At least a 10-point swing, if not a 14-point swing. Ohio State doesn't have to get away from the run. Beanie Wells was shoving it down their throats. I think Ohio State really kind of moved into the next phase when it really started recruiting much more nationally. Let's not forget, 2011 was just kind of it was just there. It was just there. It was the Luke Fickell year, but it was a Tressel roster, and Fickell was hampered with the Tressel assistant coaches, and there were just some coaches there that I don't feel were top Power 5 type assistant coaches. They had 11 receptions. There were 4 players that had 11 receptions. That led the team, or 14 receptions. That led the team. Urban Meyer called that a clown show. That was a clown show. So recruiting nationally put Ohio State up to the next level. That doesn't mean Ohio State hasn't had some shortcomings. Ohio State, we can go back to the Meyer era, losing to Purdue, losing to Iowa. Those things are still inexplicable to this day. I do not have a good reason. I mean, the one game, the Iowa game, they were coming off of the emotional win against Penn State, and they just didn't have enough fuel in the tank to be able to get it done. Whatever. You were so much more significantly talented than them. It could have been a letdown, but how the hell do you not cover one of their 3 tight ends? I don't know. I'm getting cranky right now. Carl Jenkins, the best in Ohio, stay in Ohio. Most of them were not the best at the positions. We'll be okay. You can't take them all. And if Ohio continues on an upward trajectory, you're going to have more kids that are not going to be able to get to Ohio State, because you're going to have more 4-star kids who maybe just don't fit, or high threes that don't fit what Ohio State is looking for. Ohio State has a better option somewhere else. And there are going to be people who are going to be concerned about it. And there are going to be points of where people that are concerned about it, things are going to happen and they're going to be like, see, I told you so. I told you so. You can't have it both ways. But a 75% Ohio strategy won't work. It won't. Now, people may argue with me and bring up very valid points, but I think when it comes down to the overall argument, it's just not going to work, period. I mean, there are several positions in the state of Ohio that I don't like anybody as an Ohio State caliber kid at a certain position. And it is what it is. You're going to have to go elsewhere and deal with that. I do want to jump in with something. No, I hadn't seen anybody ask this here in this chat, but somebody asked me elsewhere. Does Jameer Perez, does his defection hurt Ohio State with Sincere Johnson? Absolutely not. They're two different kids. You know, we don't necessarily, we all talk about, well, you know, this school produced 3 kids that could go anywhere in the nation or whatever, or 2 kids in Glenville's case. How often do they all end up at the same school? Almost never. Almost never. So Sincere Johnson is his own dude, as Jameer Perez is his own dude. And, you know, to sit there and say that they have to go somewhere together, I mean, why? Are they to go to the bathroom at the same time? I mean, you know, does one of them have the locker combination? I don't know. So I'm not concerned about that. Emily says losing Perez and Hill stinks, but I think we can flip Perez. If all things equal, we want the Ohio kid, in my opinion. We don't get Perez to flip. As long as we get a better because of it, I'm cool. Let me throw this out here. 10 days ago, how many people were talking about Jameer Perez in terms of recruiting? First time, long time, I'll hang up and listen. Nobody was talking about him. Now suddenly it's this giant fiasco. Suddenly it's this giant issue on a kid that nobody was talking about 10 days ago. I wasn't talking about him. Granted, I did two shows while on the road. Nobody brought up, to my knowledge, I don't remember anybody bringing up Jameer Perez at that point. We're not talking about a player at a position like Champ Smith out of Vero Beach. If Champ Smith goes elsewhere, that's a problem for Ohio State with the necessity on the offensive line and just what Champ Smith is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I think Deuce Gerald's getting away is more of an issue. Now Deuce Gerald isn't a 1-tech. Deuce Gerald isn't 330. Jameer Perez is 330. You know, he's more of the Caden McDonald body, whereas Gerald's is your 3. But I don't know. I'm not saying that Ohio State can't flip Jameer Perez. I'm not hearing from anybody this huge sense of regret or panic that he committed elsewhere here in May. You know, could they be shaping their message for one reason or another? Absolutely, they could be shaping their message. But nobody was talking about him. So why are we suddenly? I mean, nobody in this chat has flown off the handle. Nobody on this chat has been like, oh my God, oh no, the sky is falling. They lost out on him. So I don't want to sit there and build it up to something that it isn't. But if this were a kid that we were talking about every week on every show that we did, or once a week, you know, if when I do shows 3 times a week, if at least one of the shows he was getting mentioned, then I could be like, well, you know, there was a lot of concern. Now Mika doesn't count. Mika brings up names I don't even know, kids I don't even know. So she's on her own level. But with everybody else, nobody was talking about him. So I fail to come to a conclusion that it's like a huge point of contention. You know, we'll see what happens. But, you know, again, I think there are other defensive tackle targets that they're much more interested in at this point. Let's just keep going. Mika says 360. Well, that's a problem right there. Nobody's playing at 360. Nobody that is built properly really is playing at 360, unless you're the Undertaker or somebody like that. Because you're going to have to sit there and you're going to have to sit there and cut a bunch of weight. And like, say you want him to play at 325. Let's just say you want him to play at 325. You got to take him down to 300 and then build him back up to 325 properly. Tyleik Williams, I'm going to use him as an example. 2020 happens. Virginia doesn't have a football season. He sits at home by his own admission and plays video games and drinks Mountain Dew and eats chips. And they have to sit there, and while he played early, you couldn't get more than 15 snaps out of him because he was not constructed properly. So, and if Ohio State's not running a 3-4, the 1 or the 0, depending on how you want to configure your defense, is not as important. You could get away more with playing with 2 3s, with 285, 290-pound guys there. If you're playing a 3-4, you need to have that space eater in the middle, and you need those types of bodies. But they're not running a 3-4 at this point. They're not going to run a 3-4 as long as Larry Johnson is involved in the defense. Ta-da. I mean, there's the answer. They're not going to run. He is a 4-down guy exclusively. He is a 4-down guy. Now, that doesn't mean they couldn't come out and line up in a 3-4 a la carte every so often, but they're not going to sit there and be this multiple defensive front type of situation of where we could see a whole game of them running 3-4. So having a 1 is great. That is throwback football. I love watching Caden McDonald out there. That is throwback football for me, having that big 1 out there. But it's not the end of the world. And honestly, why are you 360? I'm 265, 270, 275. It varies on there. And I mean, why are you 360? Is Ted Ginn Sr. saying, we want you playing at 360? I don't think so. So I'm not, again, I don't want to say anything to where it's like, oh my God, Noon was just so mean to this kid or whatever. But 360 is not, there's like, half of a 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 half percent of football players that really can get away playing at 360. And that needs to be monitored by a dietitian and a lot of other stuff. And you're not getting that done necessarily at the high school level, short of being at IMG or something along those lines, of where all of those things are baked in to the whole situation, because it is a live on campus, non-commuter type of situation. The football team is not made up of kids from Bradenton, Florida. Bradenton High School is not far away from the IMG campus. But it may as well be 1,000 miles away in terms of the makeup of the rosters of where everybody's from. Asian Posturing getting in on my cyber hustler, yes, and my talk about that, and my talk about cyber begging. I just don't want to necessarily do that. Wow, we're so far behind on chat, so we want to continue going through this. We're over an hour and a half. Again, I want to get, I want to end the show on a high note. We're just trying to get through everything else. I'm reminded Lieutenant Governor Tressel now, absolutely, he's still the senator in my book. He's still the senator in my book. I don't care what the title says. That's what I remember him as. Florida Buckeye, Notre Dame wants an easy schedule, not a Big Ten schedule. The ACC fits Notre Dame's attitude the best. Week about to fall apart, perfect for Notre Dame. Fine. Then die, Jedi, is what I say. Enjoy. Take a full ACC schedule. Why should the Big Ten prop up Notre Dame? Period. Why should any member institution from the Big Ten schedule Notre Dame for football? What is the Big Ten gaining there? And I understand that the Big Ten is the coverall, and it's down to the schools to schedule their own opponents and everything else. Congratulations. Now, if you're Purdue or Michigan State or Team Up North or Ohio State or whoever, you're giving Notre Dame a road game, a car ride away from its campus, and giving them more exposure with kids that are within your footprint of what it is you're supposed to be recruiting. You're in the pool or you're out of the pool. You can't be sitting there dipping your toe in and everything else. This is business. This is business. I don't care what Notre Dame was pre-World War II. I don't care. It doesn't mean anything. Yes, Notre Dame beat Ohio State in 35 and 36 or something like that. And we were talking about a very different game. If we're talking about a game in 2000 and 2025 being absolutely different in what they are, just, imagine going back another 70 years, 65 years, what have you. There's no reason. The Big Ten doesn't gain anything from it. I would rather see the Big Ten go to 10 league games rather than have anybody schedule Notre Dame if Notre Dame doesn't want to be in the conference. And, quite honestly, I know that there are these arms in the contracts to where if Notre Dame joins, there's like dollar figures already kind of assigned to what it means for everybody in the whole situation. But I'm not fully convinced that that's necessarily going to change the entire calculus of the situation. I don't think people are going to get that excited about Notre Dame Purdue or Notre Dame Northwestern or Notre Dame Michigan State. I mean, I'm just sorry. I don't think that gets the same thing. You're still going to get the draw. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Notre Dame Team Up North, Notre Dame, USC, Notre Dame, whatever. Those are the games that are going to be the big money games and everything else. But if you've got somebody who's not willing to play ball with you, if you've got somebody who has an adversarial relationship with you and your interests and the interests of the people that you do business with, why are you going to do anything to help them? Yes, you may be helping yourself in signing a home deal, but if you're Ohio State or Team Up North or you're Penn State or whatever, you're selling tickets anyway. As long as your administration isn't filling that with Kent State, as long as your university isn't filling that with Central Michigan, as long as your university isn't filling that with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a smaller football program out of the state of Pennsylvania that would actually make sense or whatever. As long as you're filling it with a reasonable game, you're still going to sell all your tickets. You're still going to get the same money from the TV side. So you're not necessarily changing the entire world there. So why would you help Notre Dame? Why would you help Notre Dame? Somebody that has half a foot in the ACC and also openly, with its fans threatens, well, we'll just go to the SEC. Do it. Do it. Go to the SEC. Be irrelevant in the Midwest forever. So that's my belief there. I am losing my voice. I have almost lost my voice. So I want to be careful on here because as DeJuan Jones on defense, there's a difference though. And I know you know this. I know you're just tongue in cheek here with what an offensive tackle and what a defensive tackle need to be able to do. And truthfully speaking, it took DeJuan a while to figure out what it was that he wanted to be. And again, I am mirroring what he said. I'm not putting words in his mouth. It took him a while to figure out what it was. He wanted to be a basketball player. And then he came to realize being a football player was a lot of work. And it took some soul searching to put in the work. And once he put in the work, it worked. But you just can't sit. It's the putting a sumo wrestler in a hockey goal to be your goalie. Well, you put a big fat guy out there, there's just really no space, like a little bit in the 5-hole and maybe a little bit over, sure, he might not have the quickest reflexes or whatever, but you're filling up the spot. Well, we know that's good for cartoons. That's not good for reality. So again, I'm not signing up for any 360-pound defensive tackles at this point that I don't necessarily have enough due diligence done on there to know that it is at least in a good weight. And again, really, I mean, we sit there, it's funny when you watch fat guys from the NFL get out of the league and they drop all the weight, and you watch skinny guys from the NFL get out of the NFL and they put on all the weight. Because it's not really a sustainable weight to be able to go around at. I say that as I need to probably go to the gym, but we'll see if that gets done today. Doug says Kevin is doing his best to ease Mika's anxiety. I'll never be able to do that when it comes to arguing about Ohio players. She is very opinionated and she bases her opinions in facts. So it's hard to debate with her because she comes with a loaded gun. It's not a case of where it's just like whatever. She has facts and figures or whatever. We're just going to disagree. I mean, we're just gonna disagree on that one. Mozart's Ghost, Big John Hankins came in as a freshman at 350, had to get down to 330. And again, it's not a case of, all right, you've dropped your 20 pounds. Suddenly we're going to check off every box on your physical. A lot of times you have to sit there and get to 310 and then put on 20 pounds of, I'm not going to say necessarily 20 pounds strictly of muscle, but 20 pounds of good weight to be, it's a challenge out there. And the athletes are bigger, stronger, faster. Just being a giant impediment in their way isn't necessarily going to do anything anymore. You've got to be out there and be athletic. You got to be able to get out there and, be a dancing bear, as they say, a Russian dancing bear, and be able to ride the unicycle and do all this while having this massive body and everything else. Brad Smith says Florida's D tackle Watson that just signed with Tampa as an undrafted free agent weighed in at 464, an anomaly for sure. He also spent several years in a collegiate program, and they didn't kick him off the team or anything. I mean, I'm sure he worked with sports science people and dietitians and everything else, and it is an anomaly. But if 400 pounders could play the game at a high level, we would be talking about a lot more 400 pounders. To Brad's point of talking about an anomaly, it is an anomaly. So there you go. Troy V, I remember thinking Refrigerator Perry was huge, but he'd be normal weight today. And again, that's the thing. You're sitting there and bigger, faster, stronger. And I mean, some people are bigger and some people are faster and some people are stronger and some people are all three. And we're talking about bigger at some points. I'm just scrolling. Michael says, you make a great point. Ostracize Notre Dame. Don't give them the time of day. Shun Notre Dame. There is absolutely no benefit if your goal is to get Notre Dame in the league at some point. I think the goal of everybody should be to cut out this independent nonsense. You can't do that. You just can't. You're not special. You're not special. There's no reason to do that. And until teams, until leagues get serious about that, Notre Dame has zero incentive to go and confine themselves in a conference. But you can't sit there and on one side be like, we've really tried everything to get Notre Dame in the league. And then on the other side, not follow through with actual punishments and ramifications and everything else. So I've made my point. I've gotten into fights with Notre Dame fans. I don't care. Nothing is going to change my mind. If you want to play alone, then play alone. But you're really going to have to play alone. And and that's what it is. And sure, Western Kentucky would love to play Notre Dame. Sure, Indiana State would love to play Notre Dame. But there's no reason for Big Ten teams to give them a stage. None at all. I think we're getting there. We're getting there. Somebody asking me to please to watch Bucknuts Morning 5. No, I don't watch podcasts. I do my podcast, and then I listen to the Daniel Tosh podcast. And that's kind of it. Or I'll listen to Your Mom's House podcast with Tom Segura and his wife or whatever. But I don't I have enough crummy sports opinions. I don't need to listen to anybody else's. And I'm friends with the guys over there at that other site, but I'm just not going to do it. Florida Buckeye, great show, Kevin. Thanks. Mika saying, everyone hit the thumbs up, and Florida Buckeye saying that as well. So please do all of that, as we are at an hour and 45 minutes. I may not be able to talk for the next day, which, my cat will appreciate, because I will not be yelling at her to shut the hell up. So until later this week, Thursday, maybe Friday, we'll fire up the podcasting machine and do this again. I want to thank everybody for joining me here on the Big Me Kickoff. Again, be sure to sign up to Buckeye Huddle. Check us out there. Tom, Tony, myself cover the team. Mark and Berm covering recruiting. Andrew Ellis kind of doing a lot bit of everything. Ross Fulton and our teams of X's and O's guys handling stuff. Check us out there. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the thumbs up. We just broke 27,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We want to try and get to 30,000 before the Texas game. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, all you have to do is just hit subscribe. That doesn't even cost you anything. Sign up for our membership, 99 cents a month. But the best way, again, you can help us is by signing up for BuckeyeHuddle.com. But until then, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.